Memoir. Finding Lalla's Anna is my memoir. And the reason why um, I chose it as a topic today, it's because basically in it, I describe my crashing in New York City when my life was going in one direction, when I felt that it should have gone in another direction. Nothing was working. And I didn't know why I immigrated. I was at a crossroad. And what I didn't know or anticipate was that my late grandmother, was going to be the voice of wisdom, who was going to teach the lessons of the elders that I had ignored for more than 30 years to bring me back and give birth to this awareness that I was deaf to. I was deaf to it because basically I was a woman with a plan, and I had a plan for 30 years. I was going to accomplish a certain number of things. I was going to make a certain amount of money. I was going to live in a certain kind of apartment. And when all that crumbled, and I found myself a middle-aged woman starting over, the question was, why did I ever come to the United States? And when I called my grandmother to have my pity party about how life was hard, her answer was, life is not hard, you are hard. And my inside, I was like, I didn't call you for that. I called you to have a pity party. So can you please be sympathetic here? And she was like, no, I love you more than anything, but if I don't tell you the truth, who will? And so she asked me three questions. And she said, I want you to think about it, ponder. She didn't even say think about it. She said, ponder. I don't want any answer coming from your head. I want the answer coming from your gut. And I was like, what's the difference? And she said, just sit with it. And whatever comes from your gut, because your gut is not empty, that is going to be the truth. At that time, I did have intuition, but I didn't trust my intuition. I did have a voice within, but I didn't trust that voice within. I trusted the noises in my head. And the noises in my head were basically always telling me to be ahead of things, how to avoid pain, how to be ahead of mistakes, how not to trust, or how just to protect myself. And there was nothing left for the voice within to really come out. So when she said that, I was pissed, of course, because I was like, you want me to sit around and do what now? She said, sit with a question. And so the three questions were, when you don't know where you're going, go back to where you came from. So basically, go back to the past. My interpretation of that was, oh, so you want me to go back to and relive my past and go back to the events that led me to coming to the United States. I wasn't ready for that. The second question was, why do you want the things that you want? What is the goal of your pursuit? Because pursuit has two goals, either to find yourself or you find wealth. What have you found? And I didn't have any. I didn't have the wealth, and I didn't certainly wasn't aware of self-knowledge. And then the third one was, it's good to know how to do things, but the best knowledge that you could ever acquire was the knowledge of self. And I felt that was dumb because I felt that I knew myself. What is there to know? And so we had this long conversation. I was worried about my phone bill. I was pissed at her because she didn't kind of pat me in the back. But when I had the chance to sit as she required, the past came. When you don't know where you're going, go back to where you came from. The answer came. Why did I want to come to the United States? Because I needed to prove something. Why did I need to prove something? Because in my life, when younger, because I was the firstborn, the expectation, I was a disappointment. That disappointment translated into you will never amount into anything. That you will never amount to anything translated into let me prove myself to you, let me show you. That let me show you brought me to here and wanting me things that had nothing to do with why I was put on this earth to be. So there was no way, there was no alignment with the purpose that I was put on this earth to be and the goals that I was trying to reach. With that clash, there was no way that I was going to accomplish it. And so the question then became, once I realized that and kind of addressed the pain that went with being a disappointment, being angry at being a disappointment, and then finding that the people who said that, because they were my family, and maybe some of you already know that the people that you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the most. They really cut you deep. And so, but with the years, because it had been 30 years since those words were said, what I realized is that those words were not for me. They were a translation of my parents' own fear because in their past they had to struggle so much to be where they were that they had to prove so much that they really stayed in that survival mode of always excelling so that the people in the village wouldn't be disappointed at their accomplishment and at what they were expecting from them. Those expectations when translated to their own children, where it was like, you need to excel because it's our image. So I was carrying the image of a family and there was no space for my own. But the person who always knew me was my grandmother, who asked me to basically go deep and figure out what is it that I want and why do I want the things that I want. Uh, After that first break, where I realized that I was looking for things because I was seeking the approval of family. The question was then, once you stop seeking the approval of family, what remains? What is it that I really want? And what I really wanted had nothing to do with what I was chasing. But how do you then correct that and realign yourself and start listening to the voice deep within when for 30, almost 40 years, all you heard was the noises in your head. And the noises in my head were pretty consistent. They were good at their job. They were excellent at their job because I felt that they were protecting me. But what I didn't realize is that they were killing everything else within, which is my intuition, which is the divine light that I had in me, but I didn't believe I had. Even though I was praying, I was born Muslim, and I felt that as long as I prayed 5 times a day, I was okay. And then Lalla blew that away. My grandmother's name was Lalla. Lalla blew that away by asking me, why do you believe in God? And I said, what do you mean? Why do I believe in God? I was born a Muslim. I'm supposed to believe in God. What do you mean? She said, no, until you know why you believe, you'll never have a relationship with the divine, which we call Daba. And I said, what are you talking about? And she was like, no, it's good that you pray, but why do you pray? I said, because I don't want to go to hell. Hello. And so prayer out of fear, prayer out of duty, prayer because you look good when you pray. People say, oh gosh, you're a believer. But what does it mean to have faith? What does it mean to be a believer? And what do you believe in? And why do you believe in? And so she sent me in this, and I said, but we're Muslim. I said, it's not enough to say that you're Muslim. I need you to tell me, why do you believe in Daba? Because if you don't know why you believe in the divine, then your prayer have no purpose. There needs to be an establishment between you and the divine, however you choose to call it, before then you choose. Religion is a tool, and that's what I learned. Uh, Religion is a tool. Why? Because in our traditional philosophy of life. The elders for generation and generation and generation, the teaching that was passed on from the elders to the other elders to all the way us through the centuries was not Islam or Christianity or Judaism. It was a reference and respect for all of life creation, God's creation, Daba's creation. How? Because in our traditional philosophy of life, when Daba created the universe, he then put in every human being a trace, a dust of all living things, which means that within each of us are the seventh sky, the seventh earth, the ocean, the trees, the grass, every living thing that you can think of, the comet, the stars. There's a dust of it within each of us, making us a conduit and a meeting place of all the forces and powers of the universe, which is also one of the reasons why our elders never try to define a person, because what you know about yourself is really what you know for now, because all these forces that are within you, that shape you, are going to be shaped by different events. The day, your upbringing, the influences that people have on you, the way you think about things. These are all kind of moving parts that keep on changing. Some rises depending on what you're going through right now. Some will disappear because they are at some point you are not going to need them anymore. So depending on the circumstances of life, the powers that are at work within you are going to get reshaped, reshuffled, and something is going to rise that you may not always know. And the reason, and one of the ways that you know that is through basically the challenges of life, where when you have to dig deep within to kind of face something that is difficult, somewhere along the way, there's a resourcefulness that comes out of your gut that you didn't know at that during that moment that you had. And it's only long after that you realize, wait a minute, I did come through this. I did survive this. How? I didn't know I had it in me. And it it then opens it opened me up to the fact that I don't know is basically the best way to be, because it is an opening to discovering all the potential, all the hidden potential that we get to discover as we go along through our journey from birth to the time we pass on. And it kind of also uh, 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 give me my purpose in terms of we are, as human beings, we are first and foremost gatekeepers. We are the one who basically are going through our action, through our deeds, through our thoughts, are going to influence the shape and the balances of how this universe is going. Everything that we do, there's no such thing as an action or a thought that doesn't have a consequences. There's no such thing as, I don't know, coincidence. Coincidence doesn't exist. It is maybe an act or something that happens that you might not be able to explain or understand at this point, but give it time, it will reveal itself to you. And so those were the teachings that I reluctantly came back to, because I thought that for 30 years I had everything figured out. And then slowly, when basically I reached my breaking point and I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, or what I was supposed to want, those were the step-by-step teachings that my grandmother kind of pushed to me, where it was the past reconciling, because I understood that, or I experienced what it was like to repress, to kind of brush up things that had happened in my childhood that were painful, but that I thought, oh, it's nothing. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I wasn't okay. Uh, and revisiting that was beneficial in the way that it allowed me to understand where some of my reaction, what were some of my triggers, but it also allowed me to, like a review mirror, you notice that maybe what your family said at that point, it doesn't excuse it or justify it, but you see it with lenses of their own fear. Because what they were saying at that time were a reflection not of me, but of their own experience that they hadn't dealt with, that they hadn't. I was opening up, they didn't, and it showed. So those repressed emotion that they had, all they could do was then lash out or have harsh words because they didn't know what to do with them. It doesn't make everything okay, but I think it brought in compassion. And then when it came out, then it came time to redefine the relationships. I was in a stronger place because I could bring boundaries in a loving way. I had a better understanding of what was going on with them. I didn't excuse it, but because I had a better understanding what was going on with them, I could find the word easier to kind of say, listen, we are not doing this again. This is what you did, and it didn't fly. And it brought reconciliation of unfinished stories. Like the most difficult one that I had was with my mother before she passed away. The relationship had always been complicated because she wasn't there. And it took me 40 and something years to realize that love-hate relationship that I had was the 6-year-old girl crying for the mother that never showed up, that wasn't there when I needed her. And so how can you adore somebody and resent somebody with the same love and force at the same time? And when she passed away, uh, she gave me the most beautiful gift that you can give someone. She let me go with my love and my resentment. She knew she was sick for a very long time. She knew she was dying. And when she realized that I wasn't ready to accept her death, she just reassured me and said, no, don't worry, you go. I'll be here when you come back, knowing full well that the day I left, when I come back, she wouldn't be there anymore. And to me, that was the biggest act of love, of letting me go and let me be free with my love and resentment, and at the same time accepting that our story was incomplete, owning the fact that our story was incomplete, but it was complicated. But at the core of it, yes, there were resentment, but there was also love. And peace came when I was able to reconcile that and be okay with that, be okay with an incomplete, complicated stories that was left, that was finished the way it was. It was finished the way it was. And it was okay to let go without any. It's not a movie, so it's not going to have what you call it, an ending where everything just kind of, come together. It didn't come together, but there was the respect of two women who had been through different paths. She loved me, I knew that. She didn't know how to love me because there was so much pain with her relationship with my dad. And so me recognizing that and then saying, I love you, but I also am not okay with the fact you don't know how much I miss you because you weren't there. And be okay with that and keep going on with that. And so what I what I would say is that in terms of my dad, which was another story, I have a love story with my dad, but very complicated also because he was tough. It was saying you said some harsh words about my mother. You said she was no good when she was good, actually. You decided to be negative to somebody who couldn't fight you because you had the power. And now I can have the grace to know that and forgive you because when it was important, even though you were manipulative, I still recognize that you were there when it was important for you to be there. So it's that kind of balance where nothing is clear, but at the same time, you come to a reconciliation or a peace that allows you then to be grounded in your own truth, to accept that you are not supposed to define or be something that is definable because there are so many powers at work within you. And recognizing that, okay, you have to build up. What helped is that during that, I also built up my relationship with the divine in terms of before being a Muslim, I started asking questions. I said, but okay, so God, you exist. So where are you? What is this? How do I see you? What shape do you have? I mean, people say that you cannot be described, but sometimes I need you to show up. And the one miracle I would say that happened, but put to rest my doubt is that for a long time after I lost one brother, I had a lot of panic attacks. And one day I was sitting and I felt it coming. I felt the anxiety and I felt the angst coming. And I said, as it rose and I felt like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. And I said, God, please. And all of a sudden, everything at that same moment, everything just came down and I was at total peace. And I'm like, darn, if you show up like that, can't you show up a little bit more often? And so we and it's that, and then recognizing later on that for me, experiencing the divine was through everything that I went through because a force had to pull me, a power had to pull me through for me to be a survivor. And unfortunately, yes, we put God as miracle, but it was all miracle. And at the same time, I feel that the presence of the divine is throughout our lives and sometimes in ways that we don't pay attention to. But that doesn't make it less present. It's just that we are so used to being pulled through that we don't at least I didn't always, I don't want to generalize, I didn't always recognize that the divine force was pulling me through, but I was being protected in things like, for example, even the friendship that I made, the good people that were put on my path, the challenges that I went through that where I never became bitter. I always thought that tomorrow, for some crazy reason, I always thought that tomorrow was going to be better, that I was going to be all right. That kind of faith, even when I didn't understand it, came from the divine. But at that time, I just didn't know that that was my relationship with the divine. It was like the divine said, okay, I'll wait for you until you realize that I'm actually in the midst of all this. But in the meantime, go on. And that freedom of choice, that's what I think allowed me then to kind of embrace spirituality, kind of then read books, uh, have conversations that slowly but surely reinforced and grounded me in something that was bigger than myself. So that even in the midst of the chaos of our time, I am not alone. Even in the midst of everything that's going on in the world, I know that there's things that I'm supposed to do, but I'm not supposed to carry the troubles of the world on my hand. That's for the divine to carry. And for each of us, as we accept or kind of however we come to it, because I don't think that there's a right way for this. You come as you are, and then with the divine, you figure it out. And then you keep walking regardless of the perception of your understanding. And then I chose a religion to reflect because that's a religion that I felt comfortable with. But religion for me is just a tool. It's a tool that you use that says, okay, but you never stop being a divine creation just because you don't practice a religion. You never stop being a divine creation, even if you say, I don't have faith, I don't believe in anything. Good for you, but you're still a divine creation. That never stops. Like they say, we have a say that, the sun doesn't stop shining in a village because it's small. No, regardless of how we are, we never stop. You may shrink it, you may not see it, you may not be aware of it, but divinity remains within each and every one of us. And depending then on the path and the choices, because that's where freedom of choice comes in, right? Depending on the path, depending on the choices of our what you call it, our personal choices and the road that we choose to take, that's when it becomes like we experience it closer or we move away a little bit, because that is our also freedom, the freedom to accept it and the freedom to say, no, I do not want it. And so now that after I had figured that out, uh, painfully, I wrote, of course, my memoir. And then I felt, and I really, the first 6 months that I felt it, I panicked. Before calling myself a spiritual advisor, before embracing the legacy of my elders, I was like, but the what you call it, there's a syndrome. It's the imposter syndrome. Who am I to claim? Yes, I know. I was taught. I mean, I listened to those elders even when I didn't want to, and I listened to them even when I thought what I wasn't listening. But who am I to? Who am I to? And what sealed it for me was, and I keep telling the same story about my grandmother, Lalla. I think that when she transitioned, she was my late grandmother on my mother's side, my mother's mother's. And I felt that once she went to heaven or met the Creator, she was like, okay, so I have this little girl that I still need to watch over. And the divine was like, but that's kind of my job. And he was like, yes, we can do it together if you want to, but I really need to watch over. And I feel her spirit, and I feel the spirit of my elders. Now, in the beginning, I really felt that I was crazy. Like, how can they talk to me when they are on the other side? Are they coming looking for me? And I'm like, I'm not ready to go yet. So leave me alone. But it was feeling their spirit, hearing their voice, guiding me into some of the decision when I had question about decision that basically then convinced me that I was ready to embrace this role because I wasn't doing it alone. Once again, it was the spirit of the elders uh, guiding along with the divine, guiding me, guiding my steps, guiding my words, so that I could bring the teaching that would I hope will hopefully will help each and every one of us accept and love the person that we are at this very moment. Not the one that we are becoming, not the one that will be in 6 months of a year, but the person that we are right now at this very moment, regardless of what we are going through, regardless of what is going on in the world or in our personal lives, while also gathering information, studying spirituality however we see fit, reading, watching movies, whatever it is that can help us be that grounded person. But that all that come in addition to the fact that we are already complete. And so the completeness is going to reveal through the readings that we do, through the experience that we have, through the challenges that we go through, without ever questioning the groundedness of who we are at this very moment. because that's what basically the teaching of my elders did for me, was to ground me in something that was beyond myself, that was beyond the chaotic world that I live in, that was beyond anything that I can basically find words to explain, but keep me grounded and keep me hopeful and keep me smiling and happy even when things are not going well. I cannot tell you the last time I panicked because it doesn't happen. I tell you the last time I really went angst because yes, I get worried, but never to the point where I used to, because there is this thing within that knows that this too is a cycle. And just as it went up, it's definitely going to come down. And so those are the teaching that I put on the book, on the memoir, Finding Lalla's Anna, because it was a journey. And those are the teaching that I do now with the House of Lalla, just because I feel that we are being pulled in so many directions, folks, in terms of what political party do you belong to? What religion do you practice? Where are you in the ladder of accomplishment? Where are you in the ladder of social standing? But how about just taking a breath and saying, I am good and I'm fine, just as I am at this very moment. If there are things to figure out, I trust that I will figure them out. But I'm not alone, and I will be fine. So I think that's what I wanted to share with you. Well, because with everything that is going on, I believe that we all have everything individually. Each of us have everything that she or he needs for your individual journey. Maybe my voice will be just a reminder to trust your own self and to trust that you are on the path that you're supposed to be on, that whatever you do, you're going to be fine and it's going to be good. But trust yourself. There's nothing, the one message that I will say that was told, that I was said to me over and over again, trust yourself. You got this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much for speaking. Um, we're going to be doing